that apology doesn't necessarily lead to reconciliation. So this is a kind of response to the fact about the overlap between the independent variables and dependent variables. There is overlap kind of very nominal in terms of one is called reconciliatory, one is called reconciliation. I never claim that there is a kind of a substantive overlap, and they are conceptualized differently. One is clearly independent variable, such as apology. In other survey experiments I conducted, I use confession or regret, and other ones are the outcome variables, just forgiveness, for example, or reconciliation per se, whether I want to reconcile with the person. Second, you mentioned apology as a reconciliatory measure, and that can be considered also a reparatory measure. I also mentioned in the book that this classification is in a way, I would say, schematic in terms of there's certain definition. For example, a reconciliatory measure aim at kind of restoration of the relationship or something, or kind of going forward. Yeah, whereas revelatory measures try to reveal the truth. Obviously, if we try to, for example, reveal the truth, and the truth is revealed, that the truth also may have, for example, punitive outcome. Something what you mentioned, yes, like apology may have reparatory outcome, or the reparation may be, the fact that the reparation is conducted. It may also have kind of indirect impact on the perpetrators, who know that about the large scale of things which were happening. So I acknowledge this fact that we cannot really limit ourselves to this, but things have to be defined. That's the first thing. So there is a definition for each measure, and therefore they are classified as measure. And statistically, this kind of a conceptualization has been validated by the cluster analysis. So they essentially operate these measures. They operate essentially on the same dimension. There might be again some kind of a smaller overlaps, but essentially the dimension of these measures is the same. The third question. The third question is about the transformative measure, whether we cannot be happy only with the restorative justice theory. According to restorative justice theory, crime is an attack on the relationship, as a breakdown in a relationship, and we cannot possibly see that this is something which we should, necessarily pursue in divided societies, or especially in the international context of divided society, where, for example, there was no kind of relationship really virtually. For instance, in cases of a war rape, I mean, we don't really want to have the victim to go to bed with the perpetrator. I mean, we cannot really think about in this type of restoration of relationship categories. Likewise, I also study now the relationship between the problem of comfort women, Korean comfort women, and the Japanese perpetrators. Obviously, these are groups who live in different countries, and there is no kind of issue of relationship. But the transformation of the Japanese perpetrator, the perception of it, plays a very prominent role. So there is no kind of a thinking of any restoration, so this is a kind of something which I would like to stress. So yes, from your perspective, if you say restoration occurred in a kind of a situation like a victim, like a really kind of restorative justice context, victim, offender, mediator, reintegration of juvenile offenders, etc., to community. This type of restorations obviously are, the transformation underpins it. The transformation needs to be there, but the transformation is broader, much broader than this type of restoration. And the fourth question which you are mentioning is that, which I absolutely agree with, that more persecution actually may be needed. If there is more trials of individual perpetrators, it could be much helpful for the society if there are trials of those trials of those who killed or were responsible for killing at the Iron Curtain. They would completely dissolve this kind of a collective notions of guilt. The society, it would help the society to move on, and really it would not only be because of on the side of the perpetrators, this kind of the collective cloud which is over all of those communist members, but it would also help on the side of the victims, because I mentioned in another study which I conducted was on forgiveness, and forgiveness was predicted by punishment of perpetrators. Victims who had the perpetrator punished were more likely to forgive. So definitely this would be very helpful for the society to move on if trials were implemented on both sides for the perpetrators, for the communists, let's say. We will be dissecting the perpetrators from the communists, and then for the victim side as well. The problem is just that there were not that many trials, and for this reason it's very difficult to contemplate this kind of would-be situations. But definitely trials have a very strong potential. Thank you.
Thank you. So the people in the room have been waiting patiently, so we'll open it up to your questions and comments.